So the first thing that I wanted to ask you guys as a group was how you got involved with this. You all seem to have a unique backstory. Obviously, Mr. Kaplan, you were very involved with this from the get-go, but how does a director and an editor and somebody who's based in Hollywood, how did you get involved in something like this?
Well, David starts.
I just thought it would be a good idea to make this, and I needed help. That's as simple as that. I knew something big was happening in my field, and I also knew that 99.999% of the people out there would not know it's happening and would have no access to it. And I love my community, and I loved my experience being a physicist, and I just couldn't believe this isn't shared, that I feel we're a little isolated from the rest of humanity in some ways. So it started there, and me buying a camera and attempting to do something and raising money and getting little bits of crew. And then Mark heard about somebody trying to make this movie, and he wanted to make it too.
Yeah, I had a PhD in physics, but it was 30 years ago, and I was really in the film world doing narrative fiction work. And I heard, from these people that there was some crazy guy who wanted to make a documentary about an experiment that they didn't know if it would work. If it worked, they didn't know if it would find anything. And so they thought they didn't want to get behind it, and I jumped at it. I said, that sounds great to me. It would be the justification for my entire career. Yeah, exactly. So we had two crazy guys, and then I'll tell how we got the third.
So I was 30 plus years ago working on Phil Kaufman's Unbearable Likeness of Being in Berkeley. And Mark, unbeknownst to me, had graduated with a PhD in particle physics a couple of years earlier, but he'd started hanging around Fantasy Studios, Saul Zantz's studio, where we were cutting the film. And I was interested in this subject matter way back then. String theory was hot at the moment back then, still is. And but I heard there was somebody in the building who knew something about string theory, so I tracked him down and took him out to lunch, and that was the basis for what is now many decades friendship and collaboration. Mark and I worked together on English Patient and Talented Mr. Ripley and Cold Mountain, K-19. And then this was all in the San Francisco Bay Area. Then he moved to New York, and shortly thereafter linked up with David and started this crazy project. So I would check in with Mark every now and again. How's it going? 100 hours of footage, great. Many, a year, 2 years. And finally, 2.5 years ago, I called him up, and he sent me an assembly of what he had together. And very quickly, one thing led to another, and I found myself in New York working on this film, meeting David, and it was really just the three of us in a room pounding this stuff together out of 500 hours of material.
He did at one point in the midst of this, when I was sort of lamenting if I was ever going to finish, and Walter had actually started and finished another film while I was still shooting, sent me the quote from Hitchcock, actually, which was very inspiring, I guess, which said that, in feature films, the director is God, and in documentaries, God is the director. And I took heart from that.